Welcome everyone, Russ Nelson here, and in this video I'm going to explain the coronavirus in a way that I think most people will understand. Now, I'm not a doctor, I don't play one on TV, so I suppose whatever I say you can just assume this is just mindless babble. But I am hazmat certified, I am registered with OSHA, I am a germ-killing machine, and I do know what I'm talking about. Now, first of all, what is a virus? Well, a virus is just replicating DNA or RNA. And like most scientists out there, we don't consider a virus to be an actual living thing. It's just strands of replicating DNA. It doesn't eat anything, it doesn't excrement, it doesn't reproduce other than through its reproduction in a cell. Now, where do they come from? And nobody really knows. Now, it used to be thought that viruses were a precursor to your very first living cells. And this just simply can't be, because every virus needs a living cell in order to reproduce. If there's no living cell, they can't reproduce. This is not the chicken and the egg. This is the egg without the chicken, so to speak. Now, my best theory on this is viruses were actually some ancient form of life that created a virus as a form of their own immune system. And that got out of control, and it escaped, and then it started replicating, and such or so on, and that's where we get viruses today. So where does this particular coronavirus come from? Well, there's a lot of speculation out there that this was some kind of military weaponized scientific sci-fi kind of thing going on, and that's just highly unlikely. Very, very unlikely that could happen. And this is because you can use recombinant DNA on a bacteria, but you cannot use it on a virus. They're just too small. It's just terribly, terribly impractical. The kind of resources that it would take, you would actually have to infect hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, millions of people in order to get this virus to evolve on its own into a truly deadly strain, if it evolves into a truly deadly strain. So it's incredibly unlikely that this is some kind of weaponized military virus. So it's pretty obvious that this virus originated somewhere in China. Now, we obviously can't tell where it came from, because it's quite possible that some scientist or some person in China took a vacation to South America or Europe or whatever and got infected by bat droppings, or who knows where it came from. But this original origin is in China. So why was the coronavirus so hard to stop? Why was it so seemingly so virulent? Why couldn't we just put an end to this right away? Well, there were several major mistakes made by Donald Trump and the Chinese. Now, the Chinese did not notify anybody of their knowledge of this until long after it already started. Now, anybody who says that Dr. Fauci is to blame for something, that's simply erroneous. It just simply isn't true. Dr. Fauci did a fantastic job. He did what he was supposed to do. He told the president exactly what needed to be done, and Donald Trump simply ignored him. Had Donald Trump just followed Dr. Fauci's advice and followed basic protocol, here's what should have happened. Donald Trump should have ordered the CDC and the health department to commandeer every single manifest of every single airliner, every single military ship, every single person who's come into the United States that we could grab our hands on. And it would have been so simple. In today's age of modern technology, he could have hired 100 people like me, customer service rep, and simply trace this and track this down. And he did not do that. Once we had tracked these people down, we could have easily surgically quarantined them and warned them, and that would have cut the spread by at least 50%. Now, that's not the only issue here. The medical community really dropped the ball on this too, and I gotta put blame where blame is due. If you've ever seen those masked people who did their little experiments where they got this little pump set up and they hit the pump and this green gas comes spewing out, and within a few minutes it's covered this massive room, and they assume that everything in there is going to be infected. This is simply garbage science. This is hog trough science. These are people who are simply trying to scare you into buying their masks. I heard one of these people say, well, if everybody bought our ZX95 7X mask, this pandemic would be over in 2 weeks. Garbage. Masks don't work very well. Now, to elucidate on the subject, masks don't work because, simply put, the coronavirus is not an airborne pathogen. Period. An airborne pathogen is something like weaponized anthrax or the whooping cough, something that can survive for long periods of times, hours, days, months, years outside of a host. The coronavirus simply cannot survive that long. Now, can you get it through the air? Of course you can. But it's not what we call an airborne pathogen. It's maybe only 5% of the spread of the coronavirus could possibly be contributed to an airborne pathogen. And I'm being very generous on that. So let's explain just how the coronavirus really does actually spread. Now, the reason you can get the coronavirus through an airborne situation is because the virus is in your spit. You have to have spittle-to-spittle contact with someone who's infected. What a mask does is it keeps that spittle inside yourself, so you are not spitting it onto somebody else. Now, when you're in normal life, a normal adult walking around, it's very, very almost unheard of for you to get this through the air or even through common touch. And here's why. If you look at the coronavirus as opposed to, say, any bacteria, the one thing that really stands out is, of course, its size. But the second thing is, a virus doesn't have any skin. It doesn't have a cellular membrane. The quite simple fact is, if it dries, it dies. It can't live outside of a host like, say, the whooping cough can. So how long can the coronavirus survive outside of a human host? And that's simply one factor and one factor only, and that is the rate of evaporation. See, when you talk, every consonant that you speak, you're spitting a little bit. Well, that spit comes out and it falls to the ground. Now, how long will that live and remain infectious? That depends on how fast your spittle evaporates. It depends on the rate of evaporation. Now, if I were to take a dollar bill and say I've got the coronavirus and I blow my nose, and I put that dollar bill out on a rock in the middle of Death Valley at 120 degrees with a 0% humidity, that virus is dead in seconds. It's dead just almost like that. Now you take that same dollar bill and you put it on a log out in the middle of the Okefenokee swamp at 90 degrees with a 100% humidity. That virus is going to stay viable for almost forever until that moisture evaporates and kills it. Now, the medical community dropped the ball in two basic ways. First of all, they didn't really explain how the coronavirus is spreading. Now, only about 5% is actually from spittle-to-spittle contact through the air. That's about 5%. So where's that other 95% coming from? Well, about another 50% is coming from close human contact. That's hugging grandma, that's kissing grandma, that's kissing your wife, that's kissing your children, that's kissing your lover, that's sex. That's where at least 50% of it is coming from. So where's that other 45% coming from? Drum roll, please. It's this little fella, right here. The pot pipe, the crack pipe, the cigarette. You share one of these with somebody who's got the coronavirus. Tap! You got it. This little bad boy right here is responsible for at least 45% of the spread of the coronavirus. And the medical community just didn't think you should warn you about this. Now, I personally have gone almost 9 years without getting any viral infection whatsoever. And that's because when I'm out partying and I want to partake of a party bowl, I do this number. I wrap around it so that my lips do not touch this thing. I was at a party one time, way back in Pizza Hut days, and I know old Jeff has got a nasty cold. Around it comes, I do my gig, everybody else in that group got the cold, except for me. The second way the medical community really messed up the coronavirus response is what I call the Typhoid Mary syndrome. Most of us have heard of Typhoid Mary, but very few people really know the story behind Mary Milan. Back in 1900, the head of the health department there in New York City found an outbreak of typhus. That's a nasty, very virulent form of food poisoning or salmonella. Now they tracked this outbreak to her, and they tested her or whatever, and they found that she was a carrier. Now, a carrier is somebody who has this particular disease and can pass it on to others, but they have no symptoms themselves. Now, at this time, back in 1900, a lot of people, probably including Mary, didn't believe that bacteria caused disease. They had no idea. So when they came to quarantine her, to take her away, she, being a feisty Irish lass that she was, she fought them. Apparently, they had to actually pin her to the ground in the paddy wagon to take her off. Now, they quarantined her in a hospital. She wasn't in no jail cell. She was in a basic hospital. She could have visitors. She could, read books. She could, get the paper. She wasn't in a jail cell. Well, she went out and she wrote letters to her friends and other people and newspapers and whatever. And everybody was saying, well, you're punishing this poor woman for, just being, having this disease. So the director of the health department there finally relented. And he told Mary, you are a carrier. You are not to work in any food service industry, which is where she was working before, where she was spreading it before. So she agreed to that. And guess what? A year or so later, they had another outbreak of typhus. And guess who they found serving up tuna shit sandwiches? Good old Typhoid Mary. Now, some people say she killed 30, 40 people. Some say she probably killed maybe 10. We'll never know. But she knew she was infected, and she knew that she was not supposed to be in a kitchen at all. So the public sentiment turned from being in her favor to no, lock that bitch up. She killed a bunch of people. Period. Now, the instance of being a carrier of typhus is like 1 in 10,000. That's 0.0001%. When I heard that the coronavirus had a 20% typhoid Mary effect, my brain nearly exploded out of my skull. And here's why. When you get infected with something like the cold or the flu, you know it in a very quick time. You're only infectious for maybe a few hours, 12 to maybe 24 hours. You know you've got it. And you know, every human being knows, if you got a cold, don't kiss grandma. I mean, grandma's smoking a pack a day and she's on oxygen, and for the love of God, don't get around her when you've got a cold or the flu. The coronavirus has a 20% carrier rate. Oh my God. There are hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of good little college girls who went and smoked a bowl, got the disease, and went and kissed their grandma, completely not knowing that they killed their grandma because the medical community did not properly inform them. I must take responsibility for at least 80% of the people who died from the coronavirus. Their blood is squarely on my hands. Read my book. Watch my videos. Had I gone back to that doctor, the doctor who originally diagnosed me with cancer, had I gone back to him and just said, "Hey doc, how would you like to win a Nobel Prize?" Had I done that, none of this would have happened. We probably wouldn't have even known that the coronavirus was here. Now, my research is of such an extreme nature that it will have an effect on the entire world. Genetic nicotine poisoning is the most terrifying epidemic humanity's ever seen. We've never seen anything even remotely close to this. Now, the coronavirus was merely a symptom of the most terrifying epidemic we've ever known. Welcome to my nightmare.